There comes a moment in every life when pain becomes too heavy to carry, when betrayal leaves a scar so deep it becomes a part of who we are. And in that moment, we're given a choice to hold on and let the pain poison us, or to let go and set ourselves free. Forgiveness, it's not about weakness. It's not about saying, "What you did was okay." No, forgiveness is strength. It is looking your pain in the face and saying, "You no longer have power over me." I have learned that true healing begins when we stop asking why it happened and start asking what we can become because of it. The art of forgiveness is not a favor we give to those who hurt us. It is the greatest gift we give to ourselves, a gift of peace, of clarity, and of reclaiming our story on our own terms. Today, I want to take you on a journey not of forgetting, but of remembering with grace. A journey where we shift from anger to empathy, from blame to understanding, and from wounds to wisdom. Because when we forgive, we do not erase the past, we rewrite the future. There comes a moment in every life when the weight of pain becomes unbearable, when a betrayal or deep hurt lodges itself so firmly into the heart that it starts shaping the way we see the world and ourselves. It changes the way we walk, the way we speak, and the way we love. We carry it in silence, pretending we've moved on, but every now and then, something small, a word, a face, a memory, opens the wound. We dress it again and again with distractions, pride, and denial. But healing, that only begins with a choice, and the choice is never easy. It is the decision to forgive, a decision that feels impossible when we have been wronged. It feels unfair when we are still hurting, yet it is the most powerful, most transformative decision we will ever make. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many believe it's about excusing the wrong, forgetting what happened, or letting someone escape accountability. But forgiveness is none of that. Forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about you. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that pain has stolen. It's about taking back your voice, your joy, your peace. It is not an act of surrender. It is an act of self-respect. When we forgive, we are not saying that what happened was right. We are saying that we will no longer allow what happened to define who we are becoming. I know how difficult that is. I know the anger that burns inside when you think about what they did. I know the tears that come at night when no one is watching, when you wonder why it happened to you. I know the silence you carry in crowded rooms because the pain has become a language you can't translate. And yet, I also know what it feels like to finally breathe again, to finally let go, not for them, but for you. I know the lightness that comes after years of carrying stories that were never yours to hold. That is what forgiveness gives you. It gives you yourself back, but we cannot forgive what we have not faced. That is the first step. We must be brave enough to confront our pain, to sit with it, to feel it, to let it rise without pushing it down. So many of us avoid our hurt because we think feeling it will break us. But the truth is, ignoring it is what keeps us broken. To forgive, we must name what hurt us. We must acknowledge the betrayal, the injustice, the cruelty, or the abandonment. We must allow ourselves to feel the rage, the grief, the loss. Only then can we begin the process of release. Forgiveness is not a moment. It is a journey. Some days you will feel free, and other days you will feel yourself slipping back into old patterns of blame and bitterness. That is okay. Forgiveness is not about perfection. It is about persistence. It is a commitment you make to yourself over and over again, to not let that pain hold the pen to your story any longer. It is a decision to choose peace over punishment, growth over grudges, and light over shadows. There is power in acknowledging your pain and still choosing love. There is courage in recognizing your scars and still offering compassion. And that compassion does not need to be directed at the person who hurt you. Sometimes forgiveness means choosing to walk away without revenge. Sometimes it means setting a boundary that says, I forgive you, but I will not allow you back into my life. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. It requires release. It is the removal of the emotional hook that ties you to someone else's mistake. What most people don't realize is that the inability to forgive often turns inward. We begin to internalize the pain. We start to believe that we are unworthy, that we are weak for having been hurt, or foolish for trusting. We start blaming ourselves for what someone else did to us, and slowly we begin to harden. We build walls to protect ourselves, but those walls also keep healing out. Forgiveness then becomes a way to soften, a way to tell yourself, you did not deserve that. A way to whisper, you are still worthy. Because in truth, the person we most often need to forgive is ourselves, for staying silent too long, for not walking away sooner, for believing the lies, for breaking our own heart while trying to protect someone else. So many of us carry silent burdens, unspoken apologies we wish we had received, closures we never got, answers that never came. And so many of us wait endlessly for someone to say, I'm sorry. But what if they never do? What if the apology never arrives? Do we stay stuck forever, holding on to that pain like a lifeline? Or do we learn to let go even when they don't deserve our forgiveness? Because we deserve our freedom. That is the art of forgiveness. It is radical, it is fierce, it is gentle, it is bold. It is choosing to rise, not because you weren't pushed down, but because you refuse to stay there. Forgiveness begins not with others, but within ourselves. While it is often spoken about as something we offer to someone else, its deepest and most lasting impact happens inside our own hearts. Many of us walk through life with invisible wounds, inflicted through guilt, shame, and regret. We beat ourselves up for mistakes we've made, choices we regret, words we wish we could take back. We carry this emotional baggage in silence, smiling on the outside while feeling unworthy on the inside. And no matter how much external success or validation we achieve, we continue to feel a deep emptiness that cannot be filled. Because we have not yet forgiven ourselves, we are often our own harshest critics. We hold ourselves to impossible standards. We replay moments of failure over and over in our minds, as if punishing ourselves repeatedly could somehow undo the past. But life doesn't work that way. Living in regret doesn't change what happened. It only drains the present of its potential. We must understand that forgiving ourselves is not about denying responsibility or excusing poor choices. It is about accepting our humanity, about recognizing that we are constantly learning, evolving, and growing. Just as we extend understanding to others, we must learn to offer the same grace to ourselves. The journey towards self-forgiveness begins with acknowledgement. To truly forgive ourselves, we must first face what we've done or what we failed to do. That requires honesty. It requires courage. It means sitting with uncomfortable truths and not running away from them. It means saying, yes, I made a mistake, without drowning in self-hate. It means owning our part in the pain, but not allowing it to define our identity. You are not your worst moment. You are not the sum of your failures. You are the lessons you chose to learn, the growth you embraced, and the kindness you continue to offer despite your past. Often, we carry guilt not just for what we did, but for what we allowed. For staying in places we knew were hurting us, for giving too many chances, for trusting the wrong people, for not standing up for ourselves when we should have. And sometimes that guilt transforms into shame. Unlike guilt, which says I did something wrong, shame says there is something wrong with me. And that belief can become a prison, one that keeps us stuck in cycles of sabotage, and unworthiness. The path to self-forgiveness is the key to breaking that cycle. It's a declaration that says, I may have made a mistake, but I am not a mistake. In learning to forgive ourselves, we learn to love ourselves. We begin to treat our inner wounds not with blame, but with compassion. We begin to speak to ourselves the way we would speak to someone we love. Would you call your best friend a failure for falling short? Would you tell someone you care about that they are unworthy of love because of one bad decision? No, you would encourage them. You would help them see their light again. You deserve that same compassion from yourself. And yet, self-forgiveness is not always a solo journey. Sometimes it requires seeking support from a friend, a therapist, a mentor, or even from a higher power. Sometimes healing comes in community through honest conversations and vulnerability. When we speak our shame, it begins to lose its power. When we allow ourselves to be seen in our most broken state and still find acceptance, we start to believe that we are worthy, not despite our flaws, but because we are real, raw, and growing. Another essential part of self-forgiveness is making amends when necessary. If our actions have caused harm, we must take responsibility, apologize sincerely, and, if possible, repair what was broken. Not because we seek approval or absolution from others, but because it is part of restoring our own integrity. Owning our past is not a weakness. It is one of the strongest things we can do. And even when others refuse to forgive us, we must still choose to forgive ourselves. Their inability to see our growth does not negate our progress. We must also be mindful of how unforgiveness towards ourselves manifests in our lives. It often shows up as perfectionism, as overworking, as constantly needing to prove our worth. It shows up in the relationships we attract, in the boundaries we fail to set, in the opportunities we are too afraid to pursue. When we do not forgive ourselves, we begin to settle for less love, less joy, less peace, because deep down we believe that's all we deserve. But the truth is, we are allowed to move on, we are allowed to evolve, we are allowed to rewrite our story not by erasing the past, but by choosing how it shapes us moving forward. Forgiving yourself is one of the most radical acts of healing. It is choosing to be kind to yourself even when you feel broken. It is choosing to see your worth even when you've been convinced you have none. It is choosing to believe in the possibility of redemption, in the power of growth, and in the beauty of becoming. Because self-forgiveness is not a reward for being perfect. It is a right you claim when you realize that being human means falling, but also rising again and again, stronger and softer each time. Forgiveness, when extended to others, becomes one of the most profound expressions of our inner strength. It challenges every part of us that clings to justice, to anger, to the idea that someone must suffer the way we did in order for balance to be restored. It demands that we rise above the instinct to retaliate, to hold grudges, or to endlessly relive the moment we were wronged. To forgive another person is not to let them off the hook. It is to set ourselves free from the chains that bind us to pain. It is to release ourselves from the emotional prison built by resentment and to walk into the lightness of emotional freedom. The act of forgiving someone who has hurt you can feel like the most unnatural thing in the world. Especially when the wounds are deep, when trust has been broken, when the betrayal feels personal and intentional. Our minds scream that they don't deserve it, that if we forgive, we are letting them win. But what we often fail to see is that by holding on to bitterness, we are the ones losing. We are the ones drinking poison, hoping it hurts the other person. We are the ones replaying the past on an endless loop, each time reopening the wound as if it happened yesterday. Forgiveness, then, becomes an act of rebellion against the pain. It becomes a decision to say, I refuse to carry this any longer. But forgiveness does not erase memory. It does not deny reality. It does not say, "What you did was okay." Instead, it says, "What you did was not okay, but I will no longer let it live in my heart." That distinction is important. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. In fact, we remember differently after we forgive. We remember with clarity rather than pain. We remember without the emotional charge that once made us tremble. We take the lesson and leave behind the poison. That is the art of healing. That is the wisdom in forgiveness. There are times when the people who hurt us will never say sorry. They may never acknowledge the pain they caused. They may continue living their lives as though nothing ever happened, while we are left holding the broken pieces. In those moments, forgiveness becomes even more powerful, because it is no longer about them. It becomes about reclaiming our narrative, about not waiting for someone else to validate our pain before we begin to heal. It is an inner declaration that says, "I will not let your silence be the reason I stay in suffering." Sometimes the hurt is caused not by strangers, but by the people closest to us, family members, friends, partners. The ones we loved deeply and trusted completely. The betrayal feels deeper, the scar more permanent. It is in these relationships that forgiveness becomes a complex, layered process. We must navigate not just the pain of what happened, but the grief of what we thought that relationship was. Forgiveness here is not just letting go of the act, but also mourning the loss of trust, the version of them we believed in, the hope that things could have been different. It is a quiet, personal transformation that doesn't always need words or confrontation. It only needs willingness. What helps us to forgive others is understanding that hurt people. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it does offer perspective. Many people act out of their own pain, their own trauma, their own unhealed wounds. When we begin to understand that someone's behavior was a reflection of their inner world and not our worth, it softens the edges of our anger. It opens the door to compassion, not for what they did, but for the brokenness that led them there. Compassion does not mean re-engaging in toxic dynamics. It simply means choosing not to carry hatred in our hearts. Forgiveness also invites boundaries. It does not mean we allow the same behavior again. It does not mean we tolerate disrespect. In fact, sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to forgive someone and then walk away. We can love someone and still protect our peace. We can release someone from our hearts without giving them a place in our future. Forgiveness creates that space for clarity. It empowers us to make choices from love rather than fear, from freedom rather than bondage. And as we learn to forgive others, we begin to change the energy we bring into the world. We no longer act from bitterness. We no longer project our pain onto innocent people. We no longer close ourselves off to connection because of past betrayals. Forgiveness cleanses us. It allows us to show up with a soft heart in a hard world. It teaches us that grace is not weakness. It is the greatest form of power we have, because when we forgive, we are not just healing the past. We are shaping the future, not just for ourselves, but for everyone we encounter. In choosing forgiveness, we create a ripple effect. Our healing touches others. Our courage to let go becomes a silent invitation for others to do the same. Our story becomes proof that you can go through pain and still choose peace, that you can be hurt and still choose hope, that you can be broken and still choose love. Forgiveness is not a single act. It is a practice, a discipline, a way of living that we choose again and again, often in the quiet moments when no one else is watching. It is not something we do once and then forget. It's something we grow into. Like healing, forgiveness is a journey that unfolds slowly, and it demands patience, awareness, and a deep willingness to return to ourselves. We are not always ready to forgive the first time we try, and that's okay. Sometimes we must visit the same wound many times before it begins to close. Sometimes we must cry the same tears more than once before they finally carry the pain away. And sometimes we must forgive in layers, one for the memory, one for the impact it had, one for the future it altered. This is how true transformation happens. At the heart of this practice is presence. We cannot forgive what we are unwilling to feel. We must bring our full awareness to the pain we carry. Not just the surface level story, but the emotions underneath. The anger, the sadness, the confusion, the fear. We must sit with the version of ourselves who was hurt, without judgment, without rushing to fix or forget. We must learn to hold space for our inner world in all its messiness. Forgiveness is not about pushing feelings away. It's about allowing them to move through us. Only then can we release what no longer serves us. There is a quiet strength in choosing peace over punishment, in choosing compassion over control. And yet, it is one of the most counterintuitive things we can do. We are taught that justice means consequences, that closure means confrontation, that healing means making others understand how deeply they hurt us. But what if justice isn't always about someone else getting what they deserve? What if true justice is reclaiming your peace, your joy, your power? What if closure doesn't come from them, but from within you? From deciding that their actions no longer get to determine your inner state. One of the most powerful realizations on the path of forgiveness is that we do not need anyone else's permission to heal. We do not need their apology, their explanation, their acknowledgement. We do not need them to see our pain or change their ways. Of course, it feels good to be validated. It helps when someone says, "I see what I did, and I'm sorry." But that may never come, and even if it does, it cannot undo what has been done. Waiting for someone else to take responsibility is giving them control over your healing. Forgiveness is taking that power back. It's saying, regardless of what you do, I choose to set myself free. This freedom does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending we were never hurt. It means learning to live with the memory in a different way. It means holding our stories with compassion rather than shame. It means saying, yes, this happened. Yes, it changed me, and still I rise. Every scar tells a story of survival. Every time we forgive, we reinforce the truth that we are not victims of our past. We are the authors of our future. Forgiveness is also deeply connected to the kind of world we want to create. When we choose to forgive, we model something radical for others. We break the cycle of hurt. We refuse to pass on the pain. We become safe spaces for healing, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. We show others that it is possible to live with an open heart, even after it has been shattered. That doesn't mean we won't have boundaries. That doesn't mean we allow the same harm again. It means we carry wisdom instead of resentment. It means we walk forward with courage instead of fear. There will be days when forgiveness feels far away, when the anger resurfaces, when the ache returns. On those days, we must remember that forgiveness is not about perfection. It is not about never feeling pain again. It is about choosing, again and again, not to let that pain close our hearts. It is about choosing to soften rather than harden, to stay connected rather than isolate, to believe in healing even when the wounds feel fresh. Some days forgiveness looks like letting go. Other days, it looks like simply breathing through the pain and not letting it define you. In practicing forgiveness, we begin to understand that it is one of the highest forms of self, love. It is choosing to honor your own peace over your need to be right. It is choosing to give yourself the gift of lightness after carrying the heavy weight of pain. It is choosing to walk forward, not because you were never hurt, but because you refuse to let that hurt shape the rest of your life. It is not a moment of weakness. It is the strength to rise again with grace, with softness, and with a heart that still believes in love despite all it has endured. Forgiveness is not a destination. It is a lifelong journey that invites us to return to ourselves again and again. It is the art of choosing peace in a world that often teaches us to hold on to pain. It is the quiet revolution that begins within, transforming bitterness into wisdom, guilt into self, compassion and wounds into strength. When we learn to forgive ourselves, we make space for healing. When we learn to forgive others, we break free from cycles of resentment and reclaim our power. And when we practice forgiveness as a way of living, we begin to walk lighter, love deeper, and live with hearts unburdened. The art of forgiveness is not about forgetting what hurt us. It's about remembering who we are beyond the pain. It is about rising again and again, with softness in our spirit and strength in our soul. Because, in the end, forgiveness is not something we do for others. It is the greatest gift we give to ourselves.